النداء
يا
الليلة
شباب
الماضية
قصف جديد ما بنهيئة الأركان خالص. قصف جديد يا شباب، قصف خطونا بسرعة 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 بسرعة.
إذا استهدافنا من هيئة الأركان بشكل كامل.
قصف ثاني دمروه.
منتصر
The Middle East has known endless cycles of violence, but as a person, I refuse to stay silent. In recent days, innocent people have suffered yet again under bombs. On July 16, 2025, Israeli warplanes bombarded Damascus, Syria's capital, hitting the defense ministry in areas near the presidential palace. These strikes killed and wounded dozens. I imagine myself in Damascus, seeing the smoke rising over an ancient city where families live, love, and pray, and feel the heartbreak of this unfolding tragedy. This latest bombing is part of a broader pattern. First came the assault on Palestine, where civilians have been under siege for decades. On the same day as the Damascus strikes, Gaza mourned again. At least 80 Palestinians were reported killed by Israeli attacks since dawn. Many were women and children caught in violence far beyond their control. Then, earlier this summer, Israel extended its war to Iran. On June 13, 2025, Israeli jets struck nuclear facilities in Iran, launching a 12-day air war. Iran's officials later announced about 935 people had died in that conflict, including children and women. Among those casualties were dozens of children and 132 women. All told, Israel's strikes on Iran killed hundreds of civilians. June 12th to 26th, 2025, Israel strikes key nuclear and military sites in Iran. Reuters reports 935 killed in Iran's air war with Israel. July 16th, 2025, morning. Israeli forces also attack Gaza, killing over 80 Palestinians as aid sites are bombed. July 16th, 2025, afternoon. Israel launches heavy airstrikes on Damascus, Syria. Targets include the defense ministry and near the presidential palace. These facts cannot be ignored. This is not abstract politics. These are real people in broken homes. Whether it's in Gaza, Tehran, or Damascus, the victims are mothers, fathers, and children, just like yours or mine. On the afternoon of July 16th, powerful airstrikes rocked Damascus. The Syrian Defense Ministry building was hit, and part of it collapsed, and other bombs fell near the presidential palace. Smoke and fire engulfed the city. According to Syrian state media and medical sources, at least one person was killed and 18 injured in these strikes. Another source said 5 members of Syrian security forces died. The exact toll is unclear, but every one of those victims was a human being. We read that it struck the entrance of Syria's military HQ, according to the Israeli army, and that Syria's forces were not acting to prevent attacks on Druze and were part of the problem, in Israel's view. Even in wartime, the sight of smoke over civilian buildings is jarring. I look at the images from Damascus, even older ones. Dust clouds rising behind a mosque's minaret. 42. It could be children playing or people shopping moments before. Now there are families grieving. All this is taking place while heat and tension sweep through Syria. In the south, sectarian clashes between the Druze minority and local Bedouin tribes have raged in Suwaida province. Hundreds have died there in just days. Israel claims it intervened to protect the Druze community. Their officials said they will not allow southern Syria to become a terror stronghold. But I wonder, why must air power be used? Why must fighters clashing on the ground give an excuse for new bombing runs overhead? Israel bombed Damascus in the afternoon, hitting the defense ministry and near the presidential palace. Casualties. Reports say at least 1 dead, 18 wounded. Syrian media later reported 5 security officers killed. The confusion underscores how chaotic and dangerous the scene was. Sectarian clashes. These airstrikes coincided with deadly fighting in Suwaida, southern Syria, between Druze fighters and Bedouin tribes. The UN-backed Syrian Observatory for Human Rights estimated around 300 people killed there in just a few days. Gaza. At the same time, Gaza's death toll climbed. Over 80 Palestinians killed in Israel's bombardment of the territory since dawn. Iran. Just weeks earlier, Israel had struck deep into Iran, hitting nuclear sites and military targets. Iran says 935 people were killed during that 12-day clash. No matter which city they're in, the dead are all human. Their loss cannot be reduced to politics or strategy. This image from a previous Damascus airstrike in 2018 shows what war in Syria looks like. Buildings half destroyed, smoke rising into the sky. Each puff of smoke is someone's loss. Each shattered window is a ruined childhood. As I write, I think of mothers in Damascus hearing bombs overhead, clutching their crying children. I think of young Druze men in Sueda, once fighting out of fear, now run down with guilt and grief after those explosions. I think of a mother in Tehran who just lost her son to these same airplanes. I think of Palestinians in Gaza who hide under rooftops as the bombs fall. These people were no threat to me or mine, yet their lives were cut short. Even official figures confirm it. 38 children and 132 women were among the dead in Iran from these Israeli strikes. In Gaza, a baby, a grandmother, a teacher, people swept up by war. And now in Damascus, Syrians whose families may have lived under fire for years. War does not discriminate by morality or innocence. We all pay with humanity. It's often said that wars are started by governments and won or lost by the people. But who exactly wins when a child is killed, when an innocent family home is vaporized? The only profits come to those who sell weapons or to politicians who seek power. Meanwhile, trust between peoples is buried under rubble. I refuse to be okay with that. The world cannot just shrug off these attacks. International leaders spoke out immediately. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the strikes, calling them escalatory airstrikes on Damascus, Sueda, and Dara. He even reminded us that under international law, the Golan Heights, from which Israel often carries out raids, are still Syrian territory. Many see these actions as blatant violations of Syria's sovereignty. Turkey's government denounced the bombing as an act of sabotage against peace and stability. Even in Israel's own parliament, the ultra-Orthodox Shah's party left the coalition that day, in part over the government's hardline policies, a sign of internal dissent. In the US and EU, officials voiced concern too. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington engaged all parties and negotiated steps to end the violence by nightfall. He hoped for de-escalation after Israel's strike on the Syrian army headquarters. European leaders reiterated that Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity need to be respected. In short, this attack was not a secret. It was done in daylight, on global television. World bodies are watching. The UN Security Council planned to meet to address the crisis, and Israel's UN ambassador even demanded condemnation of barbaric crimes against civilians. Yet, as days pass, the bombs stop and news cycles move on. The impact on people lasts. We must remember. As a human being, not a politician, but simply someone who cares about truth and justice, I feel compelled to tell it like it is. This isn't a chess match between governments. It's people fighting people. I'm against war and corruption in any form. War is the ultimate failure of diplomacy and compassion. It's often fueled by greed and corruption, where the rich and powerful hold, meeting behind closed doors while the powerless pay with their lives. I refuse to accept narratives that justify killing innocents. Israel may claim these strikes were to protect the Druze or to strike terrorists, but the burden of proof is on those who drop bombs, not on those who die. Even Israeli officials acknowledged they warned Syria not to move troops south, then proceeded with the bombing when fighters clashed. It feels like moving goalposts while people bleed. We have heard all the justifications before. They were planning a buildup, or we will not allow a base. But each time civilians suffer. We owe it to our common humanity to ask, can this violence ever be justified when mothers, children, and teachers are dying? Look at the facts. Modern technology gives us every detail. We know names of ministers, we see photos of buildings collapsing. We have timelines of bombs. Nothing is hidden. And what do we do with that knowledge? We can either become numb or we can act on it. I choose the latter. Now more than ever, we must reject hatred and demand peace. Every life lost is a call for more compassion, not more bombs. As global citizens, we must stand up against this cycle of violence. That means speaking out, protesting, voting, and refusing to finance war through our choices. Let this be the final straw. I speak out with a full heart, because the alternative, silence, is unthinkable. I urge you to feel what I feel: outrage, sorrow, and a fierce determination that this ends. When I see the news of Damascus on July 16, 2025, my heart breaks for a child I will never meet. I will carry that weight. We must remember their names and faces, even if the news forgets them tomorrow. We must remind the world that there are no terrorists when the bombs fall on civilians. I am one voice among many crying out for justice. Together, our voices can create a chorus too loud to ignore. Share this message of truth, demand accountability, and never accept lies and silence from leaders who preside over bloodshed. War and corruption may dominate the headlines, but humanity can still triumph. Let us honor that hope and be the change we wish to see. No more war, no more lies. Let peace begin now.